everybody, and welcome to part 3 of our systematic review series. Today we'll be talking about starting the project, preparing for your review project, and going over research questions and protocols. So I'm Emily Newberry. I'm the Research and Scholarship Librarian at the Thompson Library. And let's go ahead and get started here. So this, as I said, is the third series in our series of evidence synthesis or systematic reviews. The next session will be on October 13th, where we'll be talking about the next portion of the process. So doing the systematized literature searching and working with Prisma documentation. And then on October 27th, we'll be doing the fifth in the series, bringing it all together: quality assessment, evaluation, documentation, and data management. In between there on October 20th, there's going to be a Deep Blue presentation, which is a presentation about University of Michigan's institutional repository. So that's a really great thing to know about too. So I encourage you to register for that. It's on our events page that you probably registered for this. But it's going to go over all those things for helping you to store your data and your documentation for projects. So the agenda for today, so we'll talk about what you should do before you even start your project, and then kind of go through the steps in the systematic review again, just to see where we're at. And then we're going to talk about preparing a good research question that you can actually do a review project off of. And then we'll take a look at the literature, because you have to do that even initially before you do your actual literature run. And then preparing a protocol, which is an essential part of this. And then at the end, there'll be time for questions. And I know there is a faculty meeting today at 1, so this will definitely not go all the way till 1, just to let you know that. So let's talk about before you get started. It's really essential that before you even start your project, you have to give some thought to what kind of review you'd like to do. So if you saw the first, or the second session, I should say, about the different kinds of reviews, you may not be doing a systematic review, in which case you might need different requirements, different process, different kinds of research questions. If you'd like to do something like a scoping review or a state-of-the-art review. So make sure that you know how complex, how time-consuming your project is going to be, and make sure you kind of read any articles to familiarize yourself with the process ahead of time before you even get started. So this is a Cochrane sort of time breakdown for a systematic review. So systematic reviews are the ones that tend to go the longest and need the longest time frame. So these are the months that they have listed that they believe you should take this time. So you can see it can be quite time consuming if you add these all up. Sometimes these systematic reviews can take over a year. So knowing that ahead of time can help you to budget your time and make sure that you have the time and resources to fully do this project. So here again is that sort of process we saw in the first session. Protocol isn't actually listed on here, but we're going to be talking about this problem formation today, and then just doing initial searches of the literature to get our protocols written. And then we'll be going through the other steps in the next 2 sessions. So the first thing you obviously want to do is figure out exactly what it is that you're trying to research, right? So when you look at your research question, especially for a systematic review, one of the things you need to be sure of is that your question is specific. If it is overly broad, you're going to have difficulty, getting a manageable size of articles. If you're trying to answer more than one question, you're going to want to separate that out and maybe potentially do 2 reviews, but you only want to have one point of interest. Otherwise, you're going to sort of, get scope creep, and your project will end up sort of getting off track and won't have the effect in the literature that you'd like it to have. And just, make sure that your question is appropriate to the type of review you're doing. So systematic reviews, as we talked about before, normally take the form of a PICO question. So here are some examples of the frameworks that you can use. So a PICO question looks at a population, an intervention, a comparison, and an outcome. Sometimes you'll see PICO with a T, PICOT, and that is time frame. There's some other ones that are useful potentially if you're not doing an evidence-based medicine kind of research topic. So SPIDER, SPICE, and ECLIPSE. Often those are used in social sciences or in like administration or policy questions in the health sciences, and the PICO questions tend to be more for the evidence-based medicine systematic reviews. There's other frameworks too, so you can probably look this up if none of these are working for you, and you can always ask me to, for guidance on this piece of it. So again, drafting a good question, you want to see first if your question falls into one of the previous frameworks. You want to have that framework before you get started so that you know how to break up your topic into the concepts in order to search effectively and to be able to see if you are even addressing what you want to address with your project. And again, if you notice multiple areas and you're kind of starting to branch off, simplify the focus to only one inquiry. You can always do multiple reviews. You can do a review on the second question. And that's a better way to go about answering more than one question. So then once you have your research question, even before you talk to a librarian, even before you write your protocol, you're going to want to kind of look into the literature on your own. And one of the very first steps that you're going to want to do is to see if the review that you're proposing has already been done, because we don't really want to duplicate effort. We don't really want to, run a systematic review that was just run last year. That's not going to really add any new information to, your field of literature. So you want to look to see, number one, if it's been done, but also if it's been done like 10 years ago, potentially it would be a good time to run an update. But if it has already been done, you may want to find a different angle to take at it. So there's several places where you can look to find protocols and to find articles that are systematic reviews to see if these have been done. So Prospero, which we'll talk about in a little bit too, Prospero is a database of protocols where people can register their protocols, which is the plan, right, for their study. So you can see if there's any coming down the pipe in Prospero. They'll show, anything that's been registered that is in process of being worked on. You can also look for the published systematic reviews or protocols in the Cochrane Library. Cochrane Library is a great collection of systematic reviews for evidence-based medicine. Epistemonicus is a great database that I'm just becoming familiar with, but it's basically a database where you can look up evidence-based documentation. So it has systematic reviews, it has other kinds of reviews, and it even has some primary studies in there. But it's a pretty easy place to go in and look up your topic, and you can see, what systematic reviews exist and, the dates on them. And then most databases like PubMed or CINAHL, if you go in there, you can filter for either review or systematic review. So you can try to type in your topic and see if anything's been published in those databases. So once you get in and find out that you are in an area that you would like to research, no one's working on it, it's good to do a quick search based on your PICO question, kind of break it down, put in those keywords, and then you can kind of see if by combining those together, if you're getting a huge number of results, or if you're getting just an overly narrow number of results. So there really isn't a great hard and fast number on these, but if you're doing a search with your keywords where you're bringing up, 100,000 articles, obviously you have to think to yourself, is this a number that we would want to go through as a team? And then, if you're only getting 7, that may show you that it's too narrow. So doing that initial search can kind of help you to craft a better research question that can help to inform the protocol as you begin to write it. And at this stage too, it's going to give you time to identify any what we call sentinel articles. So these are articles that you come across that, based on your current plan, you would believe would pass through your inclusion criteria to be used within a project you would do. So that is something that fits all the criteria that you're looking for, and is a good example of something that you would want to include in the final product. So that those articles, if you bring like 3 to 5 generally is good to the librarian once you meet with them, that can really help them to identify, related terms, the controlled vocabulary that was used in those, and we will get into all that literature searching piece in the next session. But those articles can really help. So identifying those is important. And then as you're going through, any keywords you're finding or any controlled vocabulary terms, so that's mesh, SNL headings, things like that, jot those down and what database they were used in, because again, that's helpful information that you can bring to the librarian once you get to the actual search strategy piece. So finally, we're on to preparing a protocol. And what a protocol is it's the initial plan that the team uses to lay out what they plan to do for their review. And it's very important because it essentially lets everyone know explicitly who reads the article how you planned on doing your project before you even did it. So they used to be an optional piece of it, but they're now required really as part of a well-executed systematic review process. You may see published systematic reviews that don't have protocols, but really to try to hit that gold standard, you want to have a protocol. And these protocols need to be done a priori. They need to be developed before you even begin the real process. So again, you're going to kind of be working through your question, working through what literature is available, working through your ideas of how this process of your systematic review is going to go, and then documenting them with your team. So once you have that written down and recorded, it's really going to help your team to have an agreed upon plan. So as everyone's working independently to blind review things, it gives them something to look back at to say, you know, what were the rules that we decided on? Should we include this? Should we exclude it? And how, you know, how the searches were run for the librarian. So that will all be agreed upon before you even begin the process. It's also going to ensure that your methodology is well reported, because kind of by writing the protocol, you're kind of doing a lot of that work at the beginning, at the front end. And then because you know all the rules, it's going to make it easier to report at the end. You can be really explicit about what you planned on doing, and then you won't have to worry about, you know, weird changes that were made in the middle of the process that may script the methodology and confuse the results of your project. The protocol generation piece can be iterative, but once the protocol is in place, any changes or deviations to the protocol would need to be agreed upon by the whole team. And then you also have to explain that and justify it in the write-up for your article, why you made that change and why it was necessary. So you may have heard of PRISMA, which is the preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analyses, and seen the PRISMA flowcharts that are included in systematic reviews and other reviews. PRISMA, as of 2015, has a checklist for protocols, which is called PRISMA P. And it's a really great checklist that you can use as you generate your protocol to make sure that you are kind of getting every piece laid out that you need for a good protocol. So I'm going to click out here to show you what the PRISMA P PDF looks like. I'm definitely going to have to zoom in when this loads. Oop, too much. But here we can see it gives us the different sections. So administrative information, you're going to want to write an introduction, you're going to want to lay out your methods. And then it breaks each one of those sections down into further checklists. So, you know, you can go through this at the beginning to, you know, identify it, you know, as a systematic review, sort of all the information you would put as you were submitting an article, if you were submitting it for publication. You know, if you're sponsored, the introduction then is going to guide you through how to, you know, what you need to do to write the introduction for it. And then it tells you explicitly the different things you need to include as far as your eligibility criteria, information sources, all of that information that you're going to want to have laid out in your protocol. And you can see there's descriptions here, but even the descriptions may not be as explicit as you want. So Prisma also provides this elaboration and explanation document, which is super useful, because what it does is it goes through each one of those sections. Zoom in on this too. And gives you a little bit of background, but once you get down into the body of it here, it will take each little section and give you a better explanation of what they're going for. It'll give you an example from, another protocol, but you can see everything sort of described really succinctly, and it's a really nice thing to have with you as you're working on that Prisma P checklist. Okay. So one of the things that it's very, very strongly recommended is that the protocol be registered. And so there's several places that you can register a protocol. So this essentially means like sort of locking it in, right? Once you register a protocol, it's up for the world to see how you plan on doing your project, and also letting people know that your project is in the pipeline so that somebody doesn't, duplicate it, get in there and publish it before you've had a chance to publish yours. So Prisma states, and I'm going to go ahead and read this: registration of systematic review protocol details is now recognized as desirable in order to promote and maintain transparency in the systematic review process, to assist in minimizing the risk of biases, and to help to reduce unnecessary duplication of reviews. So that's really important. And there's several places where you can register a protocol. Prospero is one. They only register systematic review protocols. So if you're doing something else, they only do systematic review protocols. Open Science Framework registers scoping and systematic review protocols. They may do other types. I'm not sure. This is the primary one that they promote, that they do scoping and systematic reviews. Campbell Collaboration registers protocols on social interventions. So that's a good place to go if you're doing more of a social science aspect or a social science question. And then the Cochrane Collaboration has, you can register systematic reviews on health interventions. Some journals even publish protocols. So if you'd like to try to have your protocol published, these are 4 journals. And in systematic reviews, there's a systematic review journal in health sciences, and there's also one in the social sciences that will publish these protocols. So if you'd like more information on that, you can contact me and we can look into that as well. But the bare minimum, what you should do is once your protocol is finalized, is you should make it findable. So even if you don't register it, if you put it into a repository that is indexed or searched by Google, your protocol will be out there. And again, you will have that sort of locked into place before you begin your project. And using a repository can be nice because it can also help you to generate a DOI. So then you can easily share your protocol as a supplemental material when you submit your article, or if you want to, just share that protocol with other people. It gives you an easy way to do that. And Deep Blue repositories are the institutional repository. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this, they will be doing a presentation for us, their team, on October 20th, and they will talk about all this. So I really encourage you to attend this because it's not just for protocols and things like that, but any of your scholarly research can be used and shared this way, or stored and shared this way. So here are just some additional protocol resources, and I will share these slides with you because there's a lot of links in these slides. But these are some great resources. So just 2 articles talking about sort of best practices and standards. And then Cochrane and Campbell both have some information on training and for guidelines for preparation. So I would encourage you to look into those. And there's also a lot of other resources out there that you could look into and find. So that is the end of my formal presentation for today. Does anybody have any questions? And I'm going to put my info up here real quick while we do that. If anybody has any questions. Stop sharing my screen. Okay, I am going to go ahead and stop recording. So I'm going to say thank you to you for attending. If you'd like to stick around and ask questions, feel free. Otherwise, if that's it, you can feel free to leave. But thank you so much for attending today.
Thank you for watching this recorded webinar. Find upcoming webinars to register for at libcal.umflint.edu.